Let's see what our Canadian politicians threw in the trash last week. I'm Maureen, a campaign manager and political consultant based out of Ontario, and I'm going through the politicians' trash so you don't have to. Remember, political trash are stories that politicians feel they need to release, but they don't want to get a lot of coverage, so they release it on a Friday because you don't read the news on Saturday. Our first story comes from Alberta, where the town of Jasper released their report on the devastating wildfire that flattened the town last year. And they cited provincial interference as a problem in this report. The report states that the province request for information's attempts to actually take over authority of the fire actually slowed down the process, which was actually being really well run by the town of Jasper and Parks Canada. However, Danielle Smith decided that this was rude and she now needs an apology. Can't quite figure that one out. If Premier Doug Ford's MO is sleight of hand, Danielle Smith's MO is deny, deny, deny. Now, there's been a lot of news about the First Minister's meeting that happened this week in Huntsville at Deerhurst Resort. So, given that this meeting is happening early in the week, we know that this is what Prime Minister Mark Carney wants us to focus on and not whatever happened last week. So, Friday, Prime Minister Mark Carney met with Indigenous leaders regarding Bill C-5. Now, we've talked about Bill C-5 in the past and how it is a big overreach of power, and it has really big implications on the First Nations in our country. Now, the meeting with leaders on Friday went really bad, like really bad. It's reported that many First Nations leaders actually walked out of this meeting, which suggests that Mark Carney was very much just like, this is the way we're doing it. Either get on board and get your part of the cash, or you can leave. Canada has an obligation to obtain free, prior, and informed consent from Indigenous groups before they're allowed to build. And because those meetings happened on a Friday, there was very little news coverage of it. I will note that Indigenous leaders were invited to this First Minister's meeting. However, in the reporting, so far I've seen that they're just invited to a gala with the First Ministers and not the actual meetings themselves. If you like this content, like, follow, and share to support my work. See you next week for more political trash.